Put your hands together for our final storyteller of the night. Where is Kendra Goffredo? Kendra.
This is a story about 3 promises. The first one, my dad made to me. The second one, we made to one another. And the last one, I made to him. So the first one, I was 4 years old, and my big sister, who liked to make me cry, told me that mom and dad were crying when I was born because they had wanted a boy, and I came out instead. Like most preschool girls, I thought boys had cooties, so this revelation was devastating. So I ran outside and I said, Dad, is it true? You wish I were a boy? And his face fell. And he got down on one knee so he could be eye level with me. And he said, Kendra, there is no adventure that I would share with a son that I'm not going to share with you. And he spent the rest of his life making good on that promise. When I was 5, he put skis and boots on my feet and brought me to the top of a snowy driveway, gave me a nice push, and told me if I wasn't falling, then I wasn't learning. Let's see, when I got into high school, he taught me how to surf. And since he was a teacher, we both had summers off, and we were living in San Diego. And I remember one summer, we surfed the sun up together almost every morning. When I was about 16, he said, what do I want for my sweet 16? Without hesitation, I said, Dad, I want to summit Half Dome in Yosemite with you. And so we did, from 4,000 feet elevation at the valley floor to 8,000, up the cables on the peak of Half Dome. That's a 17-mile round trip journey, and we did it in a speedy 7 hours because we were racing each other the whole way. But then, when my dad was in his mid-50s, and I had just graduated from college, he was diagnosed with an incurable cancer of the plasma cells called multiple myeloma. And statistics suggested he had 3 to 5 years left. So I figured that was the end of our adventures. And that brings us to the second promise. Even though the cancer had already started to erode his bones in a really painful process for him, he wasn't thinking about that. He was thinking about a promise that we had made to each other when I was running the 2-mile on my high school track team years before. He said, hey, Kendra, remember how we always talked about running that marathon together? Well, we've got 3 to 5 years to make good on that promise, so we better start training. And so, 5 months after he reminded me of that promise, we stepped to the starting line of the San Diego Rock and Roll Marathon together. It was my first marathon, his first in 20 years, and so he had a lot more experience, obviously, than I did. And so when all that adrenaline was rushing through us in the first few miles, he was, telling me, let's run the first half conservatively so we don't hit that metaphorical wall at mile 20. And so with that strategy, the first 10 miles together, we just sailed right through. It felt effortless. Then about mile 11 and 12, started to realize that maybe we just should have promised each other a half marathon. He helped me through some really dark times around mile 15, 16. Most of you who've run marathon know the chafing really sets in about mile 17. Luckily, there were some volunteers with Vaseline. We both used that. And we didn't hit that metaphorical wall at mile 20. And I can't remember much of the last 6 miles because we were just floating through effortlessly. But I do remember that as soon as that finish line was in sight, without, planning it out or anything, we both reached for each other's hands, and there were tears streaming down our faces. And we lifted our hands way over our heads, fingers interlaced. And we crossed that finish line. And we qualified for the Boston Marathon together that day. It was such a special moment, and I knew we probably wouldn't get to run Boston together because I knew that that was probably the last adventure that we would have. But my dad was a fighter, and we had 11 more years of adventures together. And that brings me to the third promise. I lost my father last year, and it's been a really, really tough 18 months. And I think the hardest part has been learning to adventure in his absence. But I keep doing it because I promised him that I would. Thank you.
Keep going for Kendra.